Welcome back to the Mayor File. I'm your host. Today, we are opening a file that has no precedent in the 250-year history of the American Republic. We are analyzing a moment that historians will likely pinpoint as the exact second where the theoretical power of the law collided with the tangible power of the presidency, and for the first time in modern memory, the law did not blink. You have seen the breaking news. You have seen the chaotic reports streaming out of the federal courthouse. Donald Trump, the former president of the United States and the current frontrunner for the Republican nomination, has had his bail revoked. He is, as of this recording, in the custody of the United States Marshals Service. We are going to move past the shock. We are going to move past the breathless chyrons on cable news. Instead, we are going to do what this channel always does. We are going to analyze the mechanics of power that led to this moment. We are going to look at the specific statute, 18 U.S. Code Section 3148, that the judge invoked. We are going to examine the logistical nightmare currently unfolding between the Secret Service and the Federal Bureau of Prisons. And we are going to look at the dark money implications of a candidate running for the White House from a jail cell. This is not just a legal update. This is an autopsy of the era of impunity. To understand why this happened today, we have to understand the concept of conditions of release. When any defendant is charged with a federal crime, they are not technically free. They are released on a contract. That contract says, you can sleep in your own bed, you can travel within reason, and you can live your life, provided you follow specific rules. For months, Donald Trump has been testing the elasticity of that contract. He has attacked witnesses. He has attacked court staff. He has attacked the families of judges. In any other case, involving any other defendant, say a drug dealer in Baltimore or a fraudster in Chicago, that behavior would have resulted in immediate detention months ago. But Trump was protected by what Jane Mayer's reporting often describes as the presidential forcefield, the unspoken assumption that the system simply could not handle the optics of jailing a former commander-in-chief. Today, that forcefield evaporated. And it didn't evaporate because of a new crime. It evaporated because of courtroom conduct. Reports from inside the chamber describe a scene of escalating defiance that mirrors the breakdown we analyzed in our previous file regarding his attorneys. But this time, the target was the defendant himself. When the judge issued a final warning regarding the intimidation of witnesses, Trump reportedly laughed. He reportedly made a comment audible to the court reporter. In that split second, the judge was faced with a binary choice. Accept that the court has no authority over this man, or assert that authority in its most absolute form. The judge chose the latter. The revocation of bail is the nuclear option in federal criminal procedure. It is a declaration by the court that there is no other way to ensure the safety of the community or the integrity of the trial. But let's look at the mechanics of the moment the gavel came down. This is where the story shifts from a legal debate to a logistical crisis. When a judge says the defendant is remanded to custody, the jurisdiction over that person's body transfers instantly. 1 minute, Donald Trump was a free man under the protection of the Secret Service. The next minute, he was the property of the Attorney General. Jane Mayer has written extensively about the bureaucratic wars inside Washington, and what we are seeing now is the ultimate turf war. You have the United States Marshals, whose duty is to transport and secure federal prisoners. And you have the Secret Service, whose statutory duty is to protect the life of the former president at all costs. These two mandates are currently in direct conflict. We are receiving reports of frantic negotiations taking place in the judges' chambers and at the Department of Justice. The Secret Service is arguing that a standard federal detention center cannot secure a former president. They are arguing that he cannot be placed in a general population or even a segregated unit without creating a national security risk. Who holds the keys? Who tastes the food? Who stands guard outside the cell? This is where the Mayer file analysis suggests we are heading toward a Gilded Cage scenario. It is unlikely Trump will be sent to a gritty detention center like MDC Brooklyn. Instead, we are likely to see the designation of a military base or a specialized safe house as a temporary detention facility. But make no mistake, the optics of confinement are the political weapon here. The image of the motorcade traveling not to a rally, but to a holding facility shatters the aura of invincibility that Trump has cultivated for decades. As Meyer's reporting on his psychology suggests, Trump's greatest fear is humiliation. He fears being seen as a loser. The revocation of bail is the ultimate branding of loser by the legal system. It says, "You are not special. You are inmate number." Let's pivot to the financial fallout. We have tracked the flow of money in Trump's orbit for years. The super PACs, the small dollar donations, the Save America war chest. This entire financial ecosystem is built on the premise of a candidate on the move. The rallies are the fundraising engine. The rallies are where the data is harvested, where the merchandise is sold, where the fervor is stoked. With bail revoked, the rallies stop. The candidate is silenced. He cannot post on Truth Social from a holding cell unless a specific arrangement is made. And given that his online posts were the cause of the revocation, the judge is unlikely to grant internet privileges. This creates a crisis for the dark money donors. Jane Mayer's book Dark Money describes how the billionaire class views politics as an investment. They invest in candidates who can deliver deregulation, tax cuts, and judicial appointments. Right now, the donor class is looking at their investment sitting in federal custody. They are asking, can he run from jail? Can he win from jail? And if he wins, how does he govern? We are likely to see a massive, quiet pivot of funds. The smart money, the Koch network money, the establishment money may suddenly start looking for a plan B. They may start funding a dark horse challenger or pouring money into congressional races to build a firewall against the chaos. The revocation of bail destabilizes the entire Republican financial ecosystem. But we must also analyze the counter-reaction. We know from Mayer's reporting on the radical right that this moment will be framed not as justice, but as martyrdom. The narrative is already being written. The deep state has kidnapped the president. We can expect the Stop the Steal network to pivot to Free the President. This increases the risk of civil unrest, which in turn puts more pressure on the judge. The judge has to weigh the legal necessity of detention against the social cost of riots. It is a terrible calculus. But by revoking bail, the judge has signaled that the threat of violence cannot be a get-out-of-jail-free card. If the courts yield to the threat of a mob, then the rule of law is already dead. There is also a profound psychological dimension to this. Trump has lived his entire life in a bubble of privilege. He has never been told no in a way that he couldn't buy his way out of, sue his way out of, or talk his way out of. Roy Cohn taught him that the law is transactional. Today, he met the non-transactional part of the law. The physical reality of having a marshal put a hand on your arm and guide you toward a holding cell is a shock to the system that no amount of preparation can mitigate. We are watching the collision of a man who believes he is the state with the actual state. Let's look deeper at the judge's rationale. Why now? Why not months ago? Legal scholars suggest that the tipping point theory applies. Judges give defendants rope. They give them rope to hang themselves or rope to pull themselves up. Trump used the rope to whip the judiciary. The specific behavior, the laughing, the smirking, the audible comments, strikes at the heart of judicial dignity. A courtroom cannot function if the defendant is allowed to treat the proceedings as a farce. If the judge allows it, the jury sees it. If the jury sees it, they may conclude that the charges aren't serious. By revoking bail, the judge is protecting the sanctity of the trial itself. He is telling the jury, this is serious. This is real. This brings us to the comparisons. We often hear that no one is above the law. But for years, that has felt like a slogan, not a reality. We saw wealthy financiers like Jeffrey Epstein get sweetheart deals. We saw political operatives get pardoned. The cynicism in the American public runs deep. Jane Mayer's work has often highlighted this two-tiered justice system. Today, those tiers collapsed. For a brief moment, the system treated a former president exactly the way it would treat a defiance defendant in a drug case. That is a restoration of faith for some and a declaration of war for others. What happens next? The defense team will file an emergency appeal to the circuit court. They will argue that detention violates his constitutional rights, that it interferes with the election, that he is not a flight risk. And technically, they are right. He is not a flight risk. He is the most recognizable man on the planet, surrounded by Secret Service agents. He cannot hop a plane to Brazil. But the bail statute has two prongs: flight risk and danger to the community. The judge's ruling is almost certainly based on the danger prong. Not that he will physically attack someone, but that his rhetoric endangers witnesses and the administration of justice. The appellate court will have to decide, is a tweet a weapon? Is a rally speech a threat? These are novel legal questions that will now be litigated on an expedited timeline. While those appeals wind through the system, Trump sits. And that sitting changes everything. It changes the campaign. It changes the psychology of the electorate. Do Americans want to vote for a man in a jumpsuit? Or does the jumpsuit make him an icon of resistance? We are in uncharted waters. But the Mayer file lens tells us to watch the institutions. Watch how the Republican Party reacts. Do they rally or do they retreat? Watch the media. Do they normalize the incarceration or do they treat it as a constitutional crisis? And watch the money. The money always tells the truth before the polls do. The showdown in the courtroom was not just about bail. It was a clash of two timelines. Trump operates on political time, where you delay, you distract, and you wait for the next news cycle. The judge operates on judicial time, where an order is an order and a violation has a consequence now. Today, judicial time won. The delay tactics ran out of road. As we close this file for today, we are left with the image of the empty chair at the defense table. The bail has been revoked, the privilege has been shattered, and the country is holding its breath. This is no longer a legal theory. It is a physical reality. The system has decided to test itself. It has decided to see if it is strong enough to hold a president. The answer to that question will determine the future of the American experiment. Stay tuned to the Mayer file. We will be tracking the emergency appeals, the donor reactions, and the secret negotiations between the Marshals and the Secret Service. This story is just beginning. Let's go even deeper into the dark money connection here, because this is the layer that most mainstream coverage misses. Jane Mayer's investigative lineage teaches us that nothing in Washington happens in a vacuum. When a judge makes a decision of this magnitude, the shockwaves are felt instantly in the boardrooms of the Federalist Society and the private retreats of the megadonors. Consider the network of conservative legal activists that helped put many of these federal judges on the bench. Leonard Leo, the Federalist Society architect, has spent decades building a judiciary that is originalist, conservative, and skeptical of federal overreach. But there is a fracture in that movement. There is the establishment conservative wing that believes in the institution of the court above all else. They are likely quietly applauding this move. They see Trump's chaos as a threat to the legitimacy of the Supreme Court majority they spent 40 years building. If the public thinks the courts are a joke because Trump mocks them, then the courts lose their power to deregulate the administrative state. So, ironically, the dark money forces that helped create the modern conservative judiciary might be fine with seeing Trump detained if it preserves the power of the courts. On the other hand, you have the MAGA populist money. This is a newer, more volatile stream of funding. It relies on small-dollar rage. For them, Trump in jail is the ultimate fundraising hook. We can expect to see emails hitting inboxes within the hour. They locked him up. Send $50 to help break him out. This creates a perverse incentive structure where the worse things get for Trump legally, the better they get for the campaign financially, at least in the short term. But can you run a general election on rage alone? Can you win over suburban moms in Pennsylvania with a candidate who is literally behind bars? The traditional donors don't think so. And that is where the fracture will widen. We also need to talk about the Secret Service paradox. This is a constitutional crisis wrapped in a logistical riddle. The Secret Service is mandated by Congress to protect the former president. They are effectively his bodyguards. The U.S. Marshals are mandated to keep him in custody. If a marshal tries to handcuff Trump and place him in a cell that the Secret Service deems unsure, what happens? Do the agents draw their weapons? It sounds like a movie script, but it is a genuine legal conflict that is being negotiated right now. The compromise, the Gilded Cage, will likely be a facility on a military base, perhaps Quantico or a specialized wing of a federal facility cleared out for this purpose. But the isolation will be real. Trump thrives on crowds. He feeds on adulation. Solitary confinement, even in a gilded cage, cuts off his narcissistic supply. That psychological deterioration could lead to even more erratic behavior, or a total collapse of his defense strategy. And what of the jury? The jury pool for the upcoming trial is now watching the news. They know the defendant is in custody. The judge will instruct them to ignore it, to presume innocence. But human beings are not robots. The presumption of innocence is hard to maintain when the defendant is being escorted into court from a holding cell. It creates a bias of guilt. It suggests that the system has already decided he is a bad actor. This is why revocation of bail is so prejudicial, and why it is usually reserved for violent criminals. By applying it here, the judge is taking a massive risk that the conviction will be overturned on appeal because the jury was tainted by the sight of the defendant in custody. This is the high-stakes poker game of federal litigation. The judge is betting that the behavior was so egregious that the appellate courts will back him up. Trump is betting that the spectacle will make him a martyr. And the American people are stuck in the middle, watching their institutions be stress-tested to the breaking point. In the coming days, watch for the habeas corpus motions. Watch for the arguments about executive privilege extending to the body of the president. We are going to see legal theories that have never been tested. Can a president govern from jail? If he wins the election in November while sitting in a cell, does he pardon himself on Inauguration Day? Does the warden have to release him to take the oath of office? These are the questions that Jane Mayer's reporting prompts us to ask. Questions about the intersection of raw power and written law. The Mayer file is not just about what happened today. It is about what happens tomorrow. And tomorrow, the definition of the American presidency will have changed forever. The taboo is broken. The line is crossed. The bail is revoked. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to the Mayer File for the only analysis that follows the money, the law, and the power, all the way to the jail cell.